Hi everybody and welcome back to Apple Cottage. This is Sandy and I am Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming. Well, I'm sitting in the wild part of my garden. I've been working out, pulling weeds, putting straw down, doing all kinds of stuff to get ready for Joe's retirement party tomorrow. And I was up in the food forest and I was reminded that sometimes those fences that divide us from between neighbors sometimes just aren't tall enough. A few weeks ago, I came home and our neighbors they had hired somebody. They were spraying their yard for weeds, which I like it that they wouldn't have weeds. But the firm didn't even have a title on the truck. I don't know who it was, otherwise I would have called them. And it wasn't too windy, but there was still a breeze. And I didn't know how long they had been spraying. I hoped that they had just started, but it wasn't long and they were gone. So it was at the very last of it. And so that didn't give me time to cover sensitive plants. And my neighbors had not told me that they were going to spray. And so it was a matter of, well, let's watch. Because when they spray, it doesn't die right then. It takes it a little bit of time. And so I watched their yard and I watched all of a sudden they were dying. And so then I had to go around my yard and there were things that all of a sudden were dying. Now you might say, well, what if it was one of your other neighbors and you didn't notice? It was in the front and in the back and they are alongside of me. And so, people make choices. Joe and I decided it forever ago that we would never use chemicals in our yard. And those are choices that we made. Choices for our food, our plants, the pollinators, the insects, the bugs, the creepy crawlies. Choices. And choices are fine unless your choice interferes with my life. And so I have to have a talk with my neighbors that if they're going to spray, tell me so I can cover sensitive plants, so I can be okay. And the things that hit the hardest were pumpkins and squash. They're up on the hill. I made the two by two boxes, and if they didn't die, they have not grown since then. And so I did a process of putting more straw bedding around them to keep the moisture in. I cut off as much leaves as I could and made it so that maybe they'll survive. I think I'm going to put a few new seeds in those two, maybe we'll have a late fall and I will still get some good pumpkins and squash from them. And then there were different things on some of the fruit trees. In fact, one of them I thought, oh, it has fire blight, but it didn't have the hook, the branch curls. And it wasn't fire blight. It was just the chemical wafted into my yard. And it's a predicament to do, especially if you don't really know your neighbors. These ones haven't lived there that long. We say hi and we talk a little bit, but not like our neighbors that used to live there. And it's a difficult situation because you want to be a good neighbor. In the comments below, tell me your situations that you've had, the best scenario that you have to deal with those, because it happens all the time. People decide they don't want to pull weeds, so they're just going to spray. Choices. So it's not the end of the world. It's just a difficult thing when you put in time and effort and money, and then in an afternoon that spray can destroy those things. Now back here where most of my raised beds are, the house blocks everything. There's big trees that block, and so I didn't find any damage in this area, just in the front and up on the hill. So I think my message for today is, if you're going to spray, tell your neighbors. If you're going to spray, try to use a chemical that is not really a chemical. It's, you know, eco-friendly based to kill those weeds. There's options out there. A million times people ask me, how do I get rid of my weeds? And a million times I tell them the same thing. You pull them. You take the time. For me, if you're going to live in a house, if you're going to have a yard, take care of your yard. It's just a difficult thing when you're trying to build, you know, your yard. You have a yard that's you're using to be self-sustaining, self-reliant, self-sufficient, and other people are affecting that. So this is just Sandy at Apple Cottage. I hope you have a great day. What I really hope is, if you're going to use chemicals, you tell your neighbors so they can cover sensitive plants. You pick a day that there is no wind. And I will see you next time.